A low-budget film is a motion picture shot with little or no funding from a major film studio or private investor. Many independent films are made on low budgets, but films made on the mainstream circuit with inexperienced or unknown filmmakers can also have low budgets. Many young or first-time filmmakers shoot low-budget films to prove their talent before doing bigger productions. Many low-budget films that do not gain some form of attention or acclaim are never released in theaters and are often sent straight to retail because of its lack of marketability, look, story, or premise. There is no precise number to define a low-budget production, and it is relative to both genre and country. What might be a low-budget film in one country may be a big budget in another. Modern-day young filmmakers rely on film festivals for pre-promotion. They use this to gain acclaim and attention for their films, which often leads to a limited release in theaters. Films that acquire a cult following may be given a wide release. Low-budget films can be either professional productions or amateur. They are either shot using professional or consumer equipment. Some genres are more conducive to low-budget filmmaking than others. Horror films are a very popular genre for low-budget directorial debuts. Jeremy Gardner, director of The Battery, says that horror fans are more attracted to how their films affect them than seeing movie stars. This allows horror films to focus more on provoking a reaction than on expensive casting choices. Thriller films are also a popular choice for low-budget films, as they focus on narrative. Science fiction films, which were once the domain of B-movies, frequently require a big budget to accommodate their special effects. But low-cost do-it-yourself computer-generated imagery can make them affordable, especially when they focus on story and characterization. Plot devices like shooting as found footage can lower production costs, and scripts that rely on extended dialogue, such as Reservoir Dogs or Sex, Lies, and Videotape, can entertain audiences without many sets. The money flow in filmmaking is a unique system because of the uncertainty of demand. The makers of the film do not know how well the film they release will be received. They may predict a film will do very well and pay back the cost of production, but only get a portion back. Or the opposite may happen, where a project that few think will go far can bring in more profit than imaginable. A big gambling variable that is also involved is the use of stars. Frequently stars are brought onto a project to gain the film publicity and fame. This process can be profitable, but it is not a foolproof mechanism to successful funding. Well-known actors may join a low-budget film for a portion of the gross. Notable low-budget films. One of the most successful low-budget films was 1999's The Blair Witch Project. It had a budget of around $60,000 but grossed almost $249 million worldwide. It spawned books, a trilogy of video games, and a less popular sequel. Possibly an even more successful low-budget film was the 1972 film Deep Throat, which cost only $22,500 to produce, yet was rumored to have grossed over $600 million, though this figure is often disputed. Another early example of a very successful low-budget film was the 1975 Bollywood curry western film Sholay, which cost Rs. $20 million to produce and grossed Rs. $3 billion, making it the highest-grossing film of all time in Indian cinema. Other examples of successful low-budget Asian films include the Chinese films Enter the Dragon starring Bruce Lee, which had a budget of $850,000 and grossed $90 million worldwide. Wayne Wang's film Chan is Missing, set on the streets of San Francisco's Chinatown, was made for $20,000 in 1982. San Francisco Chronicle columnist Herb Kohn wrote that the budget would not have paid for the shoelaces in the film Annie. Rocky was shot on a budget of $1 million and eventually grossed $225 million worldwide, making Sylvester Stallone a star. Halloween was produced on a budget of $325,000 and grossed $70 million worldwide. Napoleon Dynamite cost less than $400,000 to make, but its gross revenue was $46 million. Divisions of major film studios that specialize in such films, such as Fox Searchlight Pictures, Miramax, and New Line Cinema, have made the distribution of low-budget films competitive. The UK film Monsters is a recent successful example of bringing what was once considered the exclusive preserve of the big studios, the expensive, special effects blockbuster, to independent, low-budget cinema. The film's budget was reported to be approximately $500,000, but it grossed $4,188,738 at the box office. A considerable number of low and modest budget films have been forgotten by their makers and fallen into the public domain. This has been especially true of low-budget films made in the United States from 1923 to 1978. Examples include a number of films made by Edward or Roger Corman. Some low-budget films have failed miserably at the box office and been quickly forgotten, only to increase in popularity decades later. A number of cheaply made movies have attained cult film status after being considered some of the worst features ever made for many years. The most famous examples of this later-day popularity of low-budget box office failures include Plan 9 from Outer Space and Manos: The Hands of Fate. Additionally, some low-cost films that have had little success upon their initial release have later been considered classics. The Last Man on Earth was the first adaptation of the novel I Am Legend by Richard Matheson. Due to budgetary constraints, the vampires in the film were zombie-like creatures instead of fast and agile monsters portrayed in the novel. This approach was not considered a success at the time, but it inspired George A. Romero's work in his film Night of the Living Dead. Thus, The Last Man on Earth became a precursor to numerous zombie films, and fans of those films later rediscovered the original, making it a cult classic. Micro-budget. A micro-budget film is that which is made on an extremely low budget, sometimes as little as a few $1,000s. An example of such would be the popular 1992 film El Mariachi, in which the director Robert Rodriguez was unable to afford second takes due to the $7,000 budget. Despite this, it was a success both critically and commercially, and started the young director's career. Some of the most critically acclaimed micro-budget films were by the Bengali film director Satyajit Ray, his most famous being the Apu trilogy. The first film in the trilogy, Pather Panchali, was produced on a shoestring budget of Rs. 1.5 lakh using an amateur cast and crew. The three films are now frequently listed among the greatest films of all time. All his other films that followed also had micro-budgets or low budgets, with his most expensive films being The Adventures of Gopi and Bagger at Rs. 6 lakh and Shatranj Ke Kalari at Rs. 20 lakh. Another example would be the 1977 cult film Eraserhead, which cost only $10,000 to produce. Director David Lynch had so much trouble securing funds that the film had to be made over a 6-year period, whenever Lynch could afford to shoot scenes. In 2014, journalist Kyle Smith estimated the film has grossed over $7 million. Primer is a 2004 American science fiction film about the accidental invention of time travel. The film was written, directed and produced by Shane Carruth, a former mathematician and engineer, and was completed on a budget of only $7,000. In Russia, the 1997 crime film Brother was made on around $10,000, and was extremely successful when it was first released. Paranormal Activity, a 2007 horror film written and directed by Oren Peli, was made for $15,000 and grossing about $193,355,800. Entertainment Weekly critic Owen Gleiberman gave Paranormal Activity an A- rating and called it frightening, freaky and terrifying, and said that Paranormal Activity scrapes away 30 years of encrusted nightmare cliches. Slacker, a 1991 comedy-drama film written and directed by Richard Linklater, was produced for $23,000. The film was inducted into the National Film Registry in 2012. Influenced by the success of Slacker, Clerks was written and directed by Kevin Smith for under $27,000 in 1994, which he paid for on his credit card, and grossed $3.8 million in theaters. Clerks launched Smith's career as a director, and he has made several considerable higher-budget films. The 2004 documentary Tarnation had a budget of $218.32, but grossed $592,014.